Okay, so it's Saturday. I got away from the house projects, made myself a little drink. We came out here. When I say made myself a little drink, I'm not out here getting sloshy, just something to sip on. So, degreed the camshaft. All right, I know there's a lot of uhs involved, but I have to gather my thoughts because I'm doing this in the moment. This is not rehearsed. So when you guys hear me pause, it's because I don't plan any of this shit. So this is our cam card. All right. There's two ways to go about checking it. You either use the intake center line or you use the opening and closing sequences. Either way you do it, it'll tell you what's going on. I find it a lot easier to do the opening and closing sequences. So what you got to take into consideration is exactly how the camshaft lobe works and where they measure it. I've gotten a lot better at degreeing camshafts. It was always a fucking process, man. It always took me hours to get the numbers, and I had to question myself. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why does it take you hours to degree a camshaft? Because I wasn't happy with the numbers, and I was questioning whether or not it was me or the chain or the cam, and it took me a while to really figure out what to do. So when you degree a camshaft this way that I'm doing it with the cylinder heads on, you have to use a stopper. I made this out of an old spark plug. I welded a nut on the inside, and then I have a jam nut so I can adjust this stud with a flat screwdriver. I made this. You can buy one. I had all this shit lying around, and it cost me nothing but scrap that I had. So the way I like to do this, and a lot of guys will tell you to try to do a 180 sweep, it just becomes more complicated. The easiest way I like to do it is, so if you're doing this on an Oldsmobile, this embossment here for the gasket surface on the timing cover is the reference for the dot to dot. So if you line up dot to dot, like everybody says it's wrong, but it's not. If you line up the dots on an Oldsmobile, dot to dot facing each other, you're only going to be 180 off on the cam timing. It doesn't mean that the cam timing is 180 off. That means when you stab your distributor dead on one, it'll backfire. So TDC will be with the dot up here and the dot on the crankshaft facing up in line. So I line them up as close as possible and I'll string them. And what I mean by string is I'll put a little piece of string here. I'll tape it. I got it somewhere. And then I'll just line them up, right? I got a little washer on there for weight. And then once I get that, I'll put my wire on a really close number to 0 because it's a lot easier to split the numbers on the low side than if you have them randomly anywhere. So like I'll pick like a random number between 30 and 20, and then I'll rotate it back and forth. The theory here is that if you split the difference, true top dead center will be 0 on the needle. So you should, on each rotation back and forth, when you hit the stop, you should land on the same number. So let's say theoretically right now, we're on 25. If I spin this engine over the opposite way and hit the stop, it should be 25. If I spin it the other way, it should be 25. And that's true top dead center. And then from there, you set up your dial indicator. My setup is janky, but it works. And I know it works because I've used it many times. It's definitely ghetto, but it works. And you actually see I'm still at 50 thou because I was actually checking the exhaust side, which is not 25, guys, 15. I always fuck that up. So remember, guys, you have two ways you can spin this. Always read the number from 0 going in the right direction. So it's actually 15 because that's actually when the exhaust valve closes. And that's what I was checking right now. I checked the intake. It matched our numbers. For the amount of slop this chain has, it is amazing that it's still dead on. So don't stress that, guys. Our opening and closing sequences all match the card, so we're good. And I'm happy. We degreed it. So let me go back to explaining to you guys what happens on the lobe. And I might have to draw this out if I can't find So my Mondello reference book also works as my own reference guide. So like here, how to wire a relay, old cam cards, ring cards, more cam cards, cam info, more specs on valves, old Lunati crap, spec sheet from another engine, more spreadsheets from other engines. Okay, I don't have it here. So let me, oh, my finger's in the fucking way. All right, so let's do this the easy way. I'm going to do this. Let me go grab a Sharpie to do this for you guys. I just used one over here. Here we go. You see, we're actually kind of organized today. So I'm going to go ahead and draw like a lobe, right? So this is the center of the lobe. Between here and here is going to be your intake center line if you're on the intake, right? A lot of guys will check the intake center line as a way to check if the chain is correct. So let's say if your intake center line is supposed to be like 106, if you measure, so you got to remember that the camshaft is going to rotate. And your valve opening sequence is going to happen here. And your closing sequence for the valve is going to happen here. But these don't matter when you do the intake center line. So what you do when you do the intake center line is you rotate the engine until your dial indicator stops moving. You zero it out. You're going to go backwards 100 thousandths. And then you're going to go back up 50. And that's going to give you this number. And then you're going to continue through the travel till it stops moving again. You're going to zero it out. And then you're going to go 50 thousandths on the closing end at once it starts to drop 50. And that's going to give you this number. I may have explained that wrong, but you guys get it. So you have to measure the max lift point 50 thousandths under where the dial indicator stops. You zero it out. And you actually don't have to zero it out again. Once you zero it out on here, you go back 100, up 50, you write that number down, and then you're going to go till it stops moving, which should land on 0. And then once you hit 0 on your dial indicator, you're going to go another 50 under, and that's going to be your intake center line or your ICL. I hope I remembered that right because I haven't done that in a while. But what I did, the way I did it, which is your valve opening and closing sequences, so you're going to measure 50 thousandths on the rise from the base or heel of the camshaft. And then you're going to turn your potato over and you're going to hit max lift and zero it out, right? And then once you zero it out, you continue to turn until it stops to move yet again. And then you're going to go back up 100, down 50. And that's going to be your valve closing sequences. So both of your opening and closing sequences happen 50 thousandths from the heel of the cam lobe. So you're going to go 50 up. And once you stop movement, you zero again. And then you go 50 backwards. And that'll give you your number on the camshaft. Now, I'm sure this is all fucking confusing because I'm sure I didn't explain it right. But more or less, that's how I do it. So, again, there's probably better videos out on there, but this is the simplest way that it works for me. Once you find your true top dead center, you measure the opening and the closing, and you're good. Just keep in mind, engine rotation will play a key role in how this all plays. You have to rotate the engine with your socket the way that the engine is going to rotate. So, these may be wrong or right, but I'm more or less explaining what you're measuring for. And your valve opening sequence is going to happen 50 thousandths on the rise, and then 50 thousandths before the valve closes. So you have to actually let the valve close, hit the heel, zero it out, and then go back up. And actually, I take that back. You don't have to re-zero the dial indicator, because if you zero it on the heel and you go 50, you rotate it back on the heel. As soon as you hit 0, you go 50 back, or 100 back, and you go back down 5. And the main reason for that is to take the slop out of the chain, because you have to go backwards and you have to reference that 0 point. So I hope that helps you guys out. I came out here and boom, on the first try, I got numbers that match the card. I'm very happy with that. I use that method. I may have explained it wrong, but hey, it works. I'm sorry if I suck at explaining shit. But the timing chain combination that I took the best set of gears I had that looked like they had the least amount of wear and a chain. I have 2 Cloy's chains, but this one you can tell the links are hardened and they're beefier. So I kind of looked at them and I chose what I wanted. And they seem to work good. I looked at the rollers and everything, so they all kind of pretty much looked identical. I mean, your timing gears sets are going to be like a standard type roller anyway. I don't think they're going to vary very, very much. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, take all this shit off. I cannot assemble the valve train, but I'm going to go ahead and change the valve springs. And I'm going to go ahead and touch on a couple of things to check that I didn't mention in the last video. So I'm going to try to recap that after I do this, and then I have to mark each valve where everything falls, and I may need to get shims to get the numbers right on the installed height. So for now, I'm going to take a brief pause and take all this shit off and rope my cylinders again, stick the valves up, change stuff out. We'll go from there, guys. Okay, guys, so a couple things. I swapped out one entire side of the engine, so one cylinder head. I swapped out all the springs. My specs are our low is 1.850, our high is 1.885. So we got a variance of about 35 thousandths. That matters. I'm gonna see what I can find. I have to measure one shim stack to see what the average is. And then I think I'm going to end up using a set of locators and buying a set of shims to get the height a little bit better. I'd like to get it tighter. I got really excited when the first valve spring I did landed right on the number of the installed height, which was a 1.875. But honestly, it was kind of a pipe dream to think that they were all going to be that tight. They never really are. You want to get them close. But I'm walking around because I need my dial indicator. I'm also going to show you guys a really easy way to check for valve lift without a dial indicator. So this is your valve lift clearance, right? This is the one thing I didn't mention in my other video. Sorry, I got my tool in the way. Your valve lift clearance is the lowest point of your retainer to the valve stem boss. So we know our valve lift is under 600, which comes out to be our highest point of lift is 5.75. Right here, it's hard to get this in there. This is another reason why it's kind of hard to do this, but it's hard to get in there because of the depth of the cylinder head. But right there, this is 0.612. So right there, we know we still got room. But let's do it the poor man's way. We'll bring an assortment of 1/4-inch sockets here. We're gonna eyeball this. I think the 1/2 inch is gonna do, and we're gonna worry about the outside. So you know the inside diameter or width of this hex on the flats is 0.5. So we got a ton of room. This isn't an exact science, but you could use this and feeler gauges to check for valve lift. So if you're building like a scrap build and you want to know how much valve lift clearance you got, this is a poor man's gauge, because you know right there the wall thickness between these two is well over 60 thou between the high and the low side. So meaning that between these flats, you know it's 0.5, but the added meat altogether, that's more than adequate valve clearance. And then you got all this play, you're golden, we're good. So that's a quick poor man's way of checking for valve lift clearance. So we're more than good there. Now the other thing too is if you're doing this at home and you don't have enough valve lift clearance, don't worry about it. Cams sells a tool you can chuck up on your drill and cut the valve stem boss. And while you're at it, you may as well get the proper Viton seals and use these positive type Viton seals for your valves. Much better than the umbrella seals. So just a quick little tip there, I guess, of how I've done it in the past. So we definitely know we have more than adequate clearance, and clearly this had like a 650 cam in the past, so I wasn't even worried about it. But I wanted to touch on that subject because I talked to you guys about checking the clearance between the push rod and the opening and checking at the poly lock, but that's another one that you have to check is the retainer to the valve stem boss. And that can change based on retainer. You know, there's different style of retainers that'll be sunken more, higher up more. You know, there's different style retainers as well. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is JJ mentioned he used to run lash caps with these heads. So that explains a lot. And let me tell you why. If you add height to this valve stem, it's going to put that rocker arm pattern slightly further back. You're going to be able to tighten it up. It's going to center the push rod even more. So we have that option, but unfortunately we already order our push rods and we know we're good for lift clearance and all that stuff. So I'm just going to go as is. And once we put it on the run stand, we're going to check all our components again. You know, all of our poly locks are going to get painted. Our push rods are going to get checked for drag after running it on the run stand for a little bit. So I'll do like a 20-minute run, almost like a cam break-in is what I do. I'll start it up a little bit high. Even though this camshaft's already broken in, I'm still going to do the same procedure to get things seated up right. So either way, that pretty much sums up today. One side's done. I got to finish up the other side. You can see I got the ghetto wedge here. But I figured that was good info to share with you guys. So on that note, I'll let you guys go. That kind of wraps up the work for the day. We degreed the camshaft. We spec'd out our valve springs, swapped stuff out. So on that note, share, like, subscribe. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm on there as Copper Cutlass. Don't really do much on Facebook anymore. I've been in jail too many times. Facebook jail, that is. So I'll let you guys go.